Hello, I'm Noah Price, your Christian gamer, a Christian who loves RPGs and JRPGs and just video games in general. I believe it's important for Christians to be aware of the games we play because if you love games like me, sometimes there can be sinful problems in them. And so I hope through journeying through games and revisiting or even exploring for the first time, we can actually discuss about some possible problems or just positives that could happen while playing a game for Christians. Now, every 5 games that I do basically reviews on is a special video. I did one already, which is through Magic the Gathering. I was just getting into Magic, and so I thought, why not go and actually discover, is there anything wrong with it, or is it actually good, and what benefits can come from a Christian playing that game? And today we are visiting my favorite franchise, Dragon Ball Z. I love this series so much. I grew up watching the anime ever since I was a child. While it was a bit questionable for me as a Christian to be watching this series growing up, it did seem a bit too violent for me. I still was able to watch it and got away with it, even though it had all the screaming and violence, which I'm very glad I got to. Even as a Christian, it has benefited me a lot, and we'll talk about it going on, but the game I grew up with that was mostly associated with this was Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. And since Thanksgiving has just happened, this works out so well because this was the game that I grew up playing a lot during Thanksgiving. While yes, there was the occasional Monopoly if people wanted to go through days of playing through that game, but otherwise, I was able to pack up my PS2 and play Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 with my family. So again, with it just being Thanksgiving not too long ago, I was reminiscing those old memories of playing Budokai Tenkaichi 3 with my family and thought, why not revisit this game and see what impact and what made it so great to me as a child. And there's only one way I know how to revisit old memories or the past, and that is finding Trunks. Let's go. Instant transmission. Right off the bat, jumping into this game, I'm hit with a Kamehameha wave of nostalgia with this intro cinematic. Just its promise alone of showing different characters teaming up and fighting against each other gives the promise of the what if battle factor that comes with, well, most fighting games. While many nowadays are mostly associated this with Smash Bros, it's the ultimate one that has, hey, what if these two characters fought together? And Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is a game that first really introduced this idea within a game. Any Dragon Ball Z fan, or even somebody who knows a Dragon Ball Z fan, knows that person who will always say, but if Goku was there, he would beat him, or nothing could beat Goku. And that thought process of who could beat who plagued my mind as a child. Me and my brother and even some friends would talk about, ooh, if these two fought, or who would win in a fight. While I was never one to always say that Goku would just initially win, even though he is kind of written in that way, this game was a great outlet to actually put my mouth to action. While Xenoverse is much more of a game for this factor because it's literally built on the idea of a multiverse, this still was the game that allowed me to first put in action of that idea. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's just continue in this game and see what all it has. Once in the game and getting yelled at by one of Dragon Ball Z's characters of naming the title of the game, we actually get to see the main menu. They have Dragon History, which is this game's story mode. They have Ultimate Battle, which is a actual section where you can do pre-made challenges. For example, there's one called Wolf's Natural Enemy, which basically you have to fight a team who are built around characters who have beaten Yamcha, while on top having Yamcha. I guess he just was his own enemy, I don't know. So this is a great area in case you are somebody who doesn't always have somebody to play with and you don't want to make your own challenges. There's already some set challenges there to play. Next one is Dragon World Tour, which is the game's own tournament system. Dragon Ball Z is known for having its tournaments, and this game provides it with its own mode of getting to take part in a tournament, which I love. The next one is the classic, which is Duel. This is literally the 2v2. You pick somebody and someone else picks someone else, and you could fight against a CPU or just have CPUs fight each other, or as most did, fought against another person. There's much more to talk about in here. We'll keep going, but don't worry. We'll revisit. Don't worry. We'll be right back with it. The next one on the list is Evolution Z. Now, this one's a little bit of a unique one. This is a category that lets you customize your own characters. While this is before any kind of actual personal create a character, you get to pick a existing character already, and through buying items in the shop, you can actually upgrade and make the character stronger. The next section is Ultimate Training. This is the practice mode where you can try out different combos or get used to different characters and just try things out. The next one is the Data Center. Now this is the online mode that this game had, and as a kid I never got to play this, and now I still haven't played with it. I haven't touched it. You know what? I'm good. I don't need it. I'm good. I'm just gonna keep going. One I did touch a little bit on was character reference though. Character reference is a cool spot where you actually get to learn different characters in the game. You get to learn the lore and the information from where they are in the story. All told by Chi-Chi. That does mean every single time she goes by somebody who's a Super Saiyan or just a Saiyan in general, she likes to label them as delinquents. Don't really know why. I guess it's just the violence. Maybe she just has a vendetta against Goku for making Gohan not really study even though he does. It's weird. I don't know. If you're somebody like me who loves the game's lore and loves the characters in it, but you didn't watch all of Dragon Ball, you actually get to maybe learn up about some Dragon Ball characters. This game has a large roster of characters of both Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball GT. Back when GT was canon. And then lastly we have the options, which is just the normal spot where you get to change volume sounds and stuff like that. As I mentioned, I did spend some time with some of the spots growing up with the character reference, and even a little bit here and there with the ultimate battle of its challenges. There's mainly 3 spots that I spent the most time on and made the most memories from, so let's go talk about those. Now you would think that I would have spent the most time in the story mode of this game, especially since nowadays I love RPGs, mostly for their story. While yes, a lot of it is because their customization, a lot of times it's the story. Now yes, growing up I did eventually play through and beat the whole story of this game, which is just simply set up fights that are within the story of Dragon Ball Z. Not every single fight is there, but a lot of the major fights are what you do in the story mode. And something about it just wasn't enough for me. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't where I made the most memory or had the most fun with this game. I will say this is where I spent most of my time this time going through, just seeing what matches they did decide to choose and which ones they didn't. Sometimes there's some odd, weird ones that I'm like, oh, okay, you put that in. But a lot of times you see some major fights get missed or just passed over. You can really tell the point of this game wasn't telling Dragon Ball Z's story. That's something I really have loved a lot about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, is you get a lot of love of sharing the story and having it connected with each other. In this game, the game's first told its story a little bit here and there with some text, then with the narrator reading over a little bit of what's going on or has just happened, and then you're just sent into the fight. And even in the fight, sometimes not the same events happen. There are basically 2 ways to do these fights when you're playing the story mode. You can do the first method, which is you just fight and stay alive until you see a spot where you can click in your right toggle stick. And when that happens, then an in-story event happens, either switching characters, or just some voice dialogue, and then you continue to fight. Sometimes health has changed at this point, but basically just surviving and doing this will tell the story of the match for the most part and will safely ensure you the battle. My favorite way to do this was the second option, and this is leading more to the multiverse kind of idea that this game allowed. The very first one, which is easy you can do, is basically with just Goku beat Raditz. Defeating him will make it so Goku doesn't die and you just succeed the mission. Now the next following mission is the normal one that would happen in the story, and there's the same normal explanation that's sometimes vague and doesn't really make sense how events lead to what. So for somebody who doesn't know the Dragon Ball Z story, this could be a bit confusing, but for somebody who knows, you won't be lost. But it is fun for a situation like this. But the problem is, sometimes this is very hard to do. It does make the fight and the missions go by quicker sometimes. Like, I did the almost last mission of the Dragon Ball GT arc, where you are supposed to be introduced to Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta, which is an amazing form and one of my favorite characters that gets introduced. But in this mission, if you alone with Vegeta just defeat Omega Shenron, that's it. That's the mission. Was this really hard and maybe actually worse to do than just doing the whole story as is? Yes. It's still a viable possibility, which I greatly enjoyed. The other thing I really loved is the actual inclusion of one Dragon Ball, which going back through I forgot and didn't remember was in this, And then also the DBZ movies. Having these characters while in the game's roster in general and just playing through the story is very enjoyable, and I really appreciate it, especially since I just love those movies so much. And this story mission does have 3 different difficulties of easy, medium, and hard, and this time through I actually did do the hard mission, which, whoo, this game got pretty hard. It mostly relied you on just being unforgiving to your opponents, of hitting a bunch of times, comboing, and then especially just spamming them with your ki blast power attacks. But yeah, I greatly enjoyed this game's story mode. Its story element is weird and not really told the best way, so if you're wanting that, that's not really going to get there. But if you don't have anybody else to play with and you want to fight a lot of dudes and you want to just do some more gameplay fighting, then this is a great way to do it. But the main mode that I usually played was the duel. This is literally the 1v1 fighting mode. And while this time I sadly didn't put too much time into it, mostly because it's just not the same amount of fun when it's just you versus a computer, it was enjoyable as a kid getting to play with my brother a lot of times. Just playing against different people and using different characters, using the ape form against some kind of Cell Jr. Stuff like this was great and fun to use the vast roster that this game had. And this is helped out so much by the gameplay that this game has. Just different aspects that you could do, like beam struggles. Stuff like this is iconic and just memorable within the series and even just in this game and for everybody. There's so much that I love about the tournament, just with its randomization of fighting different characters, the difficulty, and just the idea of a reward factor. And also that you don't just have one set tournament. You have the possibility of using different tournaments, like the Cell games. Even when sometimes the final person you have to fight is someone like Hercules, or it's like, one, I'm glad in general he's a character in this game, which is hilarious. It is a little bit underwhelming going against him if you're somebody like Gohan or anybody. But it is fun to be able to take on the Cell games and have the true hero of Yamcha take on Cell and bring victory. But yes, this is my favorite mode, and I had so much fun as a kid going and doing this. And just with the variety that this game has roster-wise, was a perfect match. Now, the rewards for winning these matches is normally set as just money, but this game does sometimes do, well, characters sometimes. It's not that often, but it is there. And the other thing that happens sometimes is the Dragon Balls. It's kind of funny how this game has put in the system for Dragon Balls, but you have it through running into broken materials or like hills or buildings. Sometimes you can find a Dragon Ball, and if you get all of them, you get to make a wish, which is great. And while I don't have any footage for it right here, I'm just sorry about that. I did do it as a kid, and some of the choices are, well, give me more money, which you could use to buy items for that customization spot, which isn't really something I use too much. The biggest and probably the best thing to choose always is a character. You get to have a new character, and it's a great way to unlock people. I had so much fun growing up with this game. And while it's a little bit of a weird choice to have for a Thanksgiving game, while for many today, and for me, that is Smash Bros, going back to Budokai Tenkaichi 3 was still a blast and very memorable. With its easy, but there are some finer mechanics to get good at with its combat, this game is just simply a blast, and it's fun, and it's easy to learn and easy to pick up and easy to find characters that you like that are enjoyable, who are just good, while also finding some obscure characters who some believe don't get enough attention. Tapion, anyone? I love Tapion. Tapion's cool. But Dragon Ball Z has always been a series for me that has been influential and just really has helped me out growing up. Now that I'm older and I have started to watch other series like Naruto, who I always thought was just something to make fun of for its running, once I started watching, I was, I understand why people like this series and grew up and really enjoyed it. I'm still very glad that it's not a series that I grew up with, because growing up with Dragon Ball Z as a young child, well, it didn't influence me to be very violent nowadays, which was a concern for my parents growing up. But it did teach me to become strong, not just for selfish gain. While there's characters in the series who do that, the shining light of Goku and even the other characters of the Z Warriors, them being shown as examples of gaining strength to protect others and even for some kind of enjoyment, fun, was something that has impacted me to this day. I would not work out the same way that I do today if it wasn't for growing up with Dragon Ball Z. Pushing my body to the limits and breaking it down just for the thrill of pushing my bodies to its limits started with Dragon Ball Z, and something I still appreciate and enjoy to this day. It is a weird concept for Christians, to be honest, just because it seems like there's no point in strength for a Christian, because we shouldn't rely on our own strength but God's strength, but also using that strength to serve others, or even just so that we could show the skill of meekness. While some people look at meekness in a weak kind of way, it's actually showing the more kind of strength of resisting and not using it for bad, but using it when it's actually important and having control over that strength. And it does also remind me of Dragon Ball Z and Goku's everlasting character of mercy and how he shows it to other people. This was still a very enjoyable journey revisiting this game. And while yes, some of the most enjoyment I did have through this game was its loading screens, this was the very first time of seeing loading screens that had you actually have possible actions a part of little mini games inside it. Well, this is very common in the other Budokai series. This was the very first one that made me remember and had so much joy with my brother getting ready for a match and then just spamming the A button or the X button to do the mini game. Something so small, minute, but it had so much love and care, and it was something that, I don't know, it just really enhanced the whole experience as a whole. Let me know if you ever have played Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, or if there's a different Dragon Ball Z game, fighting game specifically, that you grew up playing that was most enjoyable for you. I've heard from many as Raging Blast is an amazing game, surprisingly one I've never played. I mostly just got to play the Budokai series. But let me know down below if you ever have played those, or what other games have you grew up playing, especially during Thanksgiving time, that was most memorable. God bless. Well,